to say how does that fit into your world? You have you're at the front line. You have people who have lots of needs. Many have pain issues or have issues with even nutrition issues. And then there's the fundamental dignity issue. How do you ensure that people at the end of life have their dignity when they can't really care for themselves?
It's a huge, but I mean, there's no doubt about it. What you're doing is incredibly important to what we're doing, because all of the advances in new medicines and new ways of administering medicine are so important. Basically, down to the little syringe driver, where the medication can be administered rather than orally, so that it can go in and be fed through on a 24/7 basis. That has made such a huge difference, because if somebody is incredibly ill and nauseous, you cannot administer medication orally. So having this little gadget, which is only a small little thing like a bicycle repair tube, little kit, that will actually, the medics can prescribe and they can determine what drugs need to go into that little machine, and that can give people so much comfort. And we now, I don't know how it is here, but at home, our home care teams, our palliative home care teams, put up syringe drivers as a matter of course in the home. So, and they can monitor and manage very difficult cases at home. But obviously, as I said earlier, that's not always possible. Symptoms can be incredibly complex, and they need to be able to come into the hospice unit for a period to get their condition under control, and then they can move back home again. But having the research, having the knowledge, all of what you're doing is so important to improve the quality of life for the people that we're actually looking after. So my son is actually an engineer. He's in biomedical as well, and he was with Abbott. He's now out in Australia. But I remember the excitement when he was working with the stents that they use, and he was trying to describe this gadget and titanium and all the things that go up. Oh, I won't even try to describe it, because I just stood there and nodded and said, yes, that's wonderful, you're doing great work. But it's so important, having all of the people with the skills and the ability to actually produce the pieces of equipment that are required and to have the drugs that are needed. It's hand in hand, we're all on the same path.
That's fantastic that he obviously was enthusiastic because he knew he was helping people.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a detachment.
Oh.
He was just as important in the whole ecosystem of helping people as the individual at the bedside.
So Richard, you have a different mission in a way, which is really a supportive mission for people who have illness. And it sounds like you're, based on what you've shown there, it's a fabulous setup. I mean, it sounds, everything that you provide is great. In many ways, the fact that the social component of that for people, in fact, often people who have cancer or any advanced condition feel isolated and helpless. And maybe one of the advantages of bringing people to a central place is that they realize that they're not alone, and that there are other people who have similar problems, and that they get joint support in that. I mean, the downside is they have to be quite a ways away from home. I'm interested in have you used sort of communication, Skype, different ways of video conferencing with families at home to try and keep them involved when their family member is in Galway, for instance? Can they set up something with their up in Inishowen or wherever they are, that they can't be down that often?
Yeah, we just installed Wi-Fi through the building, because technology has gone that way now, and every age generation is aware of Skype and technology like that. So we encourage it, and we show people the age profile. Prostate cancer, you talk about 50, 60-year-old men, we can help them work the systems out. But it's interesting going back to the point about taking people out of hospital. And that's a very important part of initiating, is you know, they get their diagnosis and their treatment. Some of them will be too sick to actually stay by themselves in accommodation, so we take them at Inishivan. And we talk to the hospital, and they say the patients that stay with us recover quicker, faster than if they were staying in the hospital because of the joint supports of our oncology nurses. And I think it's a very important part that the nurses at Inishivan have time to talk to the patients every day, to assess them, to see how they're doing. They may notice them coming down in the morning that they don't look great or don't feel good, and they will be able to have a one-to-one connection where in the hospital it's just so busy. I mean, University Hospital Galway is fantastic in terms of oncology. Great range of treatments, a fantastic team, but it's just that they're so busy. It's just hugely busy for oncology. Whereas patients that stay with us, it's the one-to-one interaction with the nurses, and maybe just sitting down, talking to the patient and saying, how are you feeling today? And they may not be feeling when they explain to them that that's normal because of the treatment they're on and that. So I think getting people out of the hospital into an area they will recover faster is huge for us. And also, the clinical side is looked after people in hospital, but the psychological aspect of it never gets treated. And that's another important part through our support centre is helping people deal with a diagnosis, or not for a family member of someone who's cancer, helping them deal with it, because it has an impact, as I say, out from the patient to the family as well. So we feel that we kind of make it a holistic approach in Galway alongside the clinical side.
I'm going to inject a little bit of controversy here because, you know, what we're hearing from Richard and Cynthia, you know, first of all, you're not supported fully by government or whatever, which, you know, in the United States, that's perfectly acceptable. We accept that. But on the other hand, the kind of money that you're looking for in terms of to provide the services you do seem rather small by comparison with, you know, healthcare budgets generally, because maybe, Tom, I can punt this to you first, but, you know, some of the newer generation treatments for cancer, you know, the kind of these special molecules, which are fantastic, I mean, which can make a big difference to individuals, but will cost, you know, can cost upwards of $250,000 to $500,000 a year per patient, depending on. And, you know, we're talking about yes, that's fantastic for an individual, but for, you know, you could run a whole huge number of patients through your hospice and through Inishivan by doing that. And Tom, how do we do that? I mean, we know we have to pay for research and development, and, you know, the pharmaceutical and device companies have done a wonderful job. I mean, just so you know, the United States, we've gotten all of our the things that make us more at risk for cardiovascular disease have gotten worse. We have more diabetes now, we have more hypertension, and yet people are living an awful lot longer than they did 20, 30 years ago. And it's not because people are behaving themselves better, they're not. It's because we have, you know, medical treatments now that are very effective once people develop disease, or at least in putting off or preventing the resurgence of disease. But we pay a pretty big price for that. And Tom, you're involved in that to some degree because you have the same problem. You want to get something new off the ground, and you have to get money to do it. And for many of the things that you try and that you get into, you sound great, but often they just don't work out. Maybe they're just not. There isn't a market for them, or the market isn't big enough. And you know, money is unfortunately is the 5-letter bad word that we all need.
Well, all life is allocation of scarce resource, right? We only have two resources, money and time. I never looked at it as a zero-sum game, that money that would be dedicated to research or in our innovation ecosystem, which is largely from the investment community. Let's be clear. took away from the care delivery side. You talked about life expectancy. When I was born in 1962, since I've been born, our life expectancy has gone up by 10 years, a decade, during my lifetime. I did my best to try to bring that down last year. But what I think I would say is innovation's cost is easy to track. One can literally say this drug, from its inception to its market readiness, cost this much. Yet what is incalculable is its impact. How many people it saved, how many days out of the hospital did it create, how many lives were lengthened, and their contribution to the economy, and so on and so on. That being said, when I was a young innovator, and again, I'm an orthopedic surgeon, so my developments were in medical devices, we used to have this concept, well, I have a great idea for this plate or screw. We'll just gold plate it and it'll be better. You know, we were insouciant about really the impact. I will say now, as all of medicine is challenged to move from a volume thinking to value thinking, essentially change in outcome over cost, it is now, we're leading it in the Cleveland Clinic in our unit, value-based innovation, solving big problems for large populations, simpler, more efficiently, effectively, cheaper. So we are looking not for the next thing that gilds, what we already have and adds expense. We're actually thinking and ideating around how can we make a development more impactful, not only for the care delivery, but also for the fiscal responsibility.
And so, Cynthia, I mean, how, you obviously deal with patients who have, where their treatment has cost a lot. I mean, it may not have cost them that much, but it's cost the state a lot. I'm sure you do ask yourself at times, at what level should we treat some of these things, and to what degree will it take from some of the care that you can deliver?
Every single case that our team would deal with is different. There have been occasions when I have heard, that people felt that they were over-medicated or the treatment was extended beyond what was reasonable. But it's very hard to say. You can't make a decision for somebody else because, for example, if you've got a young mom or a young dad, they're going to fight to live for as long as they possibly can. So the medics who are dealing directly with that patient will do everything that they possibly can, and it may mean at times that the patient may have a false sense of hope. But how can you take hope from them? They may in fact have been better off if they were able to come to a point of acceptance earlier, so that the quality of their life at the end would be a bit better if they hadn't to continue with the radiation, they hadn't to continue with the chemo because it was just making them so sick. But how can I or you or anyone make a choice for somebody on that front? You have to go with each case.
Sure, I think that's one of the big difficulties we all face. And, these are choices that are difficult. I'd like to change things a little bit and bring it maybe to a focus more on Mayo and the west of Ireland, and again turn to you, Tom, and say look, we have in Cleveland Clinic is an institution with 40,000 caregivers. We deal with vast numbers of patients. We can make economies of scale. We can invest in things that we think are going to work out. How can you drive innovation in more peripheral areas where there are where you don't have the same economies? What are the things that and how should, say, County Mayo be looking to getting involved in healthcare innovation?
Well, I would say that the center of the medical universe is where the patient and the doctor get together. Sometimes that happens at a highly technical university base, Galway Cleveland Clinic, but it can happen at so many other urban, suburban, and rural. If one can embrace the concept that expertise in one's own sphere is distributed, then simply making sure that there is codified mechanisms to identify and develop great ideas, you'll find they can happen anywhere. And, it's been a particular benefit, both on a personal and professional level, to work with colleagues from all over Ireland. Different perspective, different disease states treated, different epidemiology, but super bright minds. And even when the Celtic economy was struggling so much related to a lot of the real estate, et cetera, there was still investment coming from Ireland in technologies. There's also a very favorable regulatory environment that we utilize. So those partnerships I described earlier with Enterprise Ireland, I360, the Royal College, the universities, they're very helpful to us. And so what we've really found is restricting your view to say development can only happen in a certain environment, at a degree after one's name. I have a great story. It did happen in the United States, but it's a fantastic story. One thinks that, it's your doctors, it's your PhDs that are coming up with the innovations. One of our individuals who works in our laundry noted that 2 to 3 times a day, the curtains, which you talked about cordoning off the care units in an emergency department in this case, were being washed 2 to 3 times a day. Very heavy, the act of taking them down, putting them back up, which limits access to care, right? Takes the space down. And then on an environmental situation, water, detergents, etc. Well, they said, I don't think that these are very dirty outside of the aperture through which you walk. Turns out we cultured those. There's no bacterial growth of note out about 18 inches from the aperture through which you walk. Well, they developed essentially 2 panels that are 20 inches on each side, and then you just rip those down and dispose of them, saving hundreds or thousands of dollars maybe every day and all the access. So I would say that wherever you are in the world, you are having a unique experience. You add the unique experiences, and then they grow in their importance when you're seeing trends and opportunities. And just making sure that there's access to disciplined processes that don't let those ideas lay fallow, I think is the most important thing. And Ireland has gotten the word out how important innovation is. The network through the universities, through the organizations I described, like Enterprise Ireland and I360, are very effective. And then you can layer on the fact that many corporate headquarters have relocated there. So where I see Ireland innovation is, first of all, there's great technical expertise, especially in catheters, okay, for sure. But in my specialty, orthopedics, fabulous practitioners. There's a great history in Ireland of contributions to my specialty, orthopedics. When I gave the talk at the Royal College, I was just astounded to recount the history of that. And we didn't do so bad in Scotland either, with penicillin, the telephone, and things like that. I have to put a little plug in. But I would say that region of the world is no different than the United States. The bright minds are active, and I believe that they understand the import of bringing creative and transcendent thought to the marketplace.
So I'm going to turn to Cynthia now. You talked about your son, who's an engineer, but he's gone to Australia, and so many of the highly educated, bright young people from Ireland have gone overseas, and one of the sad, that's great. They're great, great for the world and great for, but how is Mayo? How are you going to get them back? I mean, how are these, they go away and they actually get great experience and they get great ideas, but how do you bring them back?
Obviously, linkages and connectivity, what's happening here today is incredibly important. And the hope that in years to come, there will be more pharmaceutical, more the medical devices, that those industries can be developed at home. It would be marvellous, because I'm only one of many, many mums who, I'm a long distance granny now, which is really difficult. I'm seeing this little man, thank God for Skype and for FaceTime, but my little 1.5-year-old wants more nanny. But I want that child at home that I can mind him. But it has to grow from the links and the connectivity and the goodwill, and as you say, at home in Ireland we have some of the great young minds, and just opening the conversation, being here, is incredibly important. And hearing Peter speak earlier and all of the previous speakers, it's just very heartening for me as a mother with my son so far away to think that hopefully not too far down the road there will be an industry operating in Mayo so that he can come home and hands-on granny, sorry, if I'm being very, but you know, I'm not sufficiently versed to be able to say how exactly to do it. I leave that to you gentlemen who are so wise and wildly and worldly, so please do develop more of the pharmaceutical and the industries at home in Mayo. It would be amazing. Sorry, I can't add any more
Well,
to that.
I think one of the things that we see in many, and we face that here in Cleveland, it's the same issue, is how do you keep the folks who grow up in Cleveland, the bright kids, how do you get them back? And you know, obviously it's not easy, but networks are obviously very important, and making sure that, you know, that there is people are attracted by that ability to interact. And I think what Tom talked about earlier about port cities, that or people where there's a freedom of information, where people can think outside the box. And I think, you know, to Ireland's credit, have done a very good job of providing areas where that happens. I think one of the challenges in Ireland is that it's a relatively small market, and so it has to be an export market. And you know, that can be challenging to develop a product that is sufficiently cost neutral, or that you can export it.
Brian, does the term cluster resonate in this audience?
Yes, yeah.
So I think that's where opportunities for states like Ohio, countries like Ireland, the concept that there's a propinquity, a geographic proximity and a cultural alignment that brings talent, interdependence. You know, this cluster concept, I think, really does have a magnetism and a gravitas to it. You know, there's an Italian leather cluster in Milan. There is wine, the production cluster in our Napa Valley, our Silicon Valley, obviously. I think those are the opportunities. If you feel that if it's resource limited by population size or initial investment, identifying the talents and capabilities and supporting them, probably in some type of public-private partnership, and maybe even public-private academic or academy partnership, I think is the best opportunities for us in Northeastern Ohio, medicine, right? And what I just said about some of the great capabilities that we're seeing from Ireland. Bring the talents there. Sometimes, you know, it doesn't take much that when you have such a great university system, as you do through all of Ireland, then turning a cluster into a constellation, because they're geographically close enough to really say, these are going to be our areas of expertise. Don't limit it to that. And, you know, we've all benefited around the world from your diaspora. But saying that if you want to do a certain thing, Ireland is the place for it. And I think that strategy, it comes out of meetings like this, where again, representatives from different sectors have an opportunity to share ideas. So, and that's kind of what we're trying to do with Ireland, is assist them in developing select expertise clusters.
So, Richard, we've left you out for a little bit, but you know, you were the heart of the cluster there of patients, of people who come, and you know, this idea that everything has to be that you have to be in a big place to do things. I think isn't always correct. I mean, the ideas can come from many different places, and I don't know how you, when people come to get their care in Galway and you deal with them, I'm sure a lot of them have individual ideas about how you can improve your services.
Yeah, it's interesting that we've had over 3,000 patients now through Sullivan, and next month I'm just hosting some focus groups from people who have been ex-residents who have been out of our service for the last year and a half to meet with them again. They're in a better place to talk about improvements that we could about our service, because when they're obviously, we don't charge for a service. When people don't charge for a service, they're going to be less critical of it. So you really want to get them in an environment where they can look at what we provided, and if they give us 1% we can improve on. For people that's coming after them, that would be hugely beneficial. But I also want to talk to them about when they leave us, in Inisheven, for instance, they get 6 to 8 weeks of complete care, they recover, they go back out to their homes. What are they like out there in terms of how they recover, how do they assimilate back into the community? Is there something we could be providing to them after care? And that's something, because we kind of lose track of them to a certain extent, and as I say, the clinical side could be treated, but maybe there's issues going on with them around their own life, adapting back into a family, work life, that we hopefully may be able to address. So there's one of the interesting things we hope to find out from focus groups in all the counties that we serve, and 2 in some. So I'm hoping to get some really good feedback from people who've been through our service.